with friends and family and feeling connected. I appreciate this quote from Rabbi Kadar during these moments of serenity. Not everything has answers. We can take control of that which is possible and let go of the rest. May we all find our moments of peace, wholeness, and completeness. We continue on page 291 with the blessings for body and spirit. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe. With divine wisdom, you have made our bodies, combining veins, arteries, and vital organs into a finely balanced network. Wondrous maker and sustainer of life, were one of them to fail, how well we are aware we would lack the strength to sustain life before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, source of our health and strength. Baruch atah Adonai, rofei chol basar, u'masli la'asot. Page 292, for the Holy Spirit within us. Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi tehorahi. Try Elohai with us like this. Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi tehorahi. Ata berata, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi. Ve'ata mishamera, mishamra b'kirbi. Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi tehorahi.
Last night I heard Rabbi Zach Pleasant teach that in the days to come, all prayers will be unnecessary, except for prayers of gratitude. Those we will always need. And so I invite you to turn to page 293, and there we find a whole series of brief blessings for the daily miracles of our lives, that we're able to wake up, that our bodies function, that we're able to put our feet on the ground, that we're able to get dressed, and that we're able to live as best we can in this world each day. And so I'll invite you to join me in chanting each of them. We'll begin in Hebrew and we'll conclude each line, each blessing in English. I think you'll catch on pretty easily. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who opens the eyes of the blind. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who frees the captive. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who lifts up the fallen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who made me in the image of God. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me free. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me a Jew. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who crowns Israel with splendor. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who makes our lives holy through the commandments, and who commands us at every age and every stage to engage with words of Torah.
Amen. Page 302. Mizmor shir leyom hashabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Mizmor shir leyom hashabbat, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Ve'agid aboker chastecha, ve'emunacha b'leilot, alei asor ve'alei navet, alei higayon lefinot. To the top. Mizmor shir leyom hashabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha, od yehalelucha selah. Ashrei ha'am shekacha lo, Ashrei ha'am she'Adonai Eloham. Top of page 303. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha, od yehalelucha selah. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha, od yehalelucha selah. Ashrei, Ashrei, Ashrei yoshvei beitecha. Ashrei, Ashrei, Ashrei yoshvei beitecha. Happy are those who dwell in your house, they shall sing your praises forever. Happy are those who dwell in your house, they shall sing your praises forever. Ashrei, Ashrei, Ashrei yoshvei beitecha. Ashrei, Ashrei, Ashrei. Happy are those, let's all sing it. Happy are those who dwell in your house, they shall sing your praise. If you're feeling happy to be back in here, let's sing it. Happy are those who dwell in your house, they shall sing your praises forever.
So nice to see everybody here. So glad you could make it.
When our class began reading Leviticus and studying the meaning of the portion of the Torah we'll read today, I had my reservations. How could a list of rules lead us to a meaningful discussion? I'll take this off. God sets out instructions about allowing the land to rest every 7th year. He also offers guidelines for the year of Jubilee, being fair to neighbors, and laws concerning property. How can we interpret this and make this meaningful for the 21st century? The most significant message to me was the idea that the Israelites were one community. God created rituals and customs which brought people together as one. Even today, performing these rituals and rites together gives us the sense of community. Nothing seems to me more comforting than things that are predictable and familiar. The strength in the idea that we are doing what our Jewish ancestors have done for generations is a force which binds us all together. During this past year, I have been able to understand and recognize how this has impacted my own Jewish existence. Learning the meaning of prayer and the comfort I have experienced with the clergy, my classmates and family has made my appreciation of being Jewish become really clear. We're a close community with ties that bind us together. We continue now. Let me find my directions. We continue with Psalm 150 on page 306.
Yasher Koach, Amen. Thank you. And the most universal experience when we feel joy to shout out in praise and say hallelujah. It's originally a Jewish word, so that's all you got to know to sing this melody. We hope you'll sing and clap your hands as we celebrate this joyful milestone. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Continue on page 312, Chatzi Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah B'yomad yivrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayechon u'v'yomechon U'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala ba'agala U'v'zman kariv v'yimeru Yeshmei Rabbah mevorach Le'alam li'ol me'al maya Yitbarach, Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yidnaseh V'yidhadar v'yidaleh v'yidhalal Shemei dekudesha brichu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Tushvechata v'nechemata Da'amiram v'yalma v'yimeru.
Amen. We rise for our call to prayer. Baruch Hu, page 313.
Yai lai 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 lai, ya la lai lai lai, ya la lai lai lai, ya la lai lai lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya la lai lai lai, ya la lai lai lai, Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed, le'olam va'ed. Yai lai 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 lai, yai 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 lai lai.
When I joined the B'nai Mitzvah program at Temple Israel, I'm sorry, please be seated. Once more. When I joined the B'nai Mitzvah program at Temple Israel, I never imagined how important discussions with rabbis and fellow students would be as the pandemic descended. Our discussions, which migrated to Zoom, became a lifeline that helped counter our sudden isolation. We talked about prayer and the difference between prayers of the heart, kavanah, and prayers of our liturgy, keva. We helped one another learn Hebrew, which was like cracking a code. Most memorable were our discussions about God and whether we even believed in God at all. Throughout these discussions, the pandemic continued to rage. For months, I couldn't see my mother and daughter, let alone hold them in my arms or exchange a kiss. As an antidote, I began attending services regularly. I took solace in saying the same Hebrew prayers that my grandparents and great-grandparents said, along with a continuum of Jews stretching back thousands of years. And I felt better, if only for the moment. In a beautiful sermon he gave on March 5th, marking the one-year anniversary of the pandemic, Rabbi Friedman talked about the many ways we've been changed by COVID-19. For me, all that change brought me to one simple conclusion. The people we love are all that matters. Everything else is window dressing. But as Rabbi Friedman pointed out, it's the actions we take to express our feelings that impact those we love. Myriad examples in my own life prove his point. When my daughter Joanna showed up unexpectedly in our backyard after months of separation, my spirits lifted. Her action chased away my despondency. Then, after more than a year, I was finally allowed to visit my mother inside her residence at the Jewish home, and we hugged for the first time since the pandemic began. It felt like a new beginning. As I was leaving, her nurse asked me if I would visit a resident named Ruth before I left. Ruth is 101 and one of my favorite people. I will never forget the look on her face as I entered her room. She stretched out her arms and said, "Please, come give me a hug." That's the power of acting on our feelings. 2 hugs in one day, transformative.
I invite us to read responsively in English on the middle of page 317. O God, inspiration and guide for all, you have spoken in 1,000 tongues for us to hear. In every land and every age, your children have heard you. I think this speaks to you and what you just said. Your children have heard you and imagined you in separate ways. And yet, O God, you are one, unifier of humanity. Together,
We give
We give
thanks
For the sages and teachers who bring us understanding of your will. Gratefully we recall the lawgivers and prophets, the psalmists and sages of Israel.
And joyfully we remember that from the dawn of Israel's life, we return to you and find purpose.
may the teachings of our ancestors live in our minds and their passion for righteousness stir our hearts. Help us to live so that our daily conduct reveals the beauty and wisdom of your truth. Baruch atah Adonai, Habocher ba'amo Yisrael ba'ahava.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Melech Tudo Page 319. Adonai Elohecha V'chol levacha Uv'chol nafshecha Uv'chol meodecha V'hayu Hadvarim ha'ele Asher anochi metzavecha Hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha V'dibarta bam B'shivtecha b'veitecha U'v'lechtecha v'derech U'v'shochbecha u'v'kunecha U'keshartam le'ot ayadecha V'hayu letotafot b'neinecha U'chtavtam המזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמן.
We have all faced troubling times, especially during this past year. These have been some of the very dark and difficult days indeed. Each among us has struggled through our own fears and our own isolation, trying to keep up with daily developing news of a pandemic, the likes of which we have never experienced, has made us acutely aware of the fallibility of our societies. A healthcare system on the verge of collapse, evictions, hunger. Many of our social systems were breaking down and they were being overwhelmed. Personally, I felt that our society was failing us one by one. Where do we turn for that? Interestingly, this otherwise mundane portion of Leviticus gives us insight into similar struggles of our people thousands of years ago. Today's Torah portion, Leviticus 25, offers powerful and concrete societal rules established for Israelites after the Exodus. They too were faced with overwhelming difficulties and fears of wandering into the darkness, into the unknown. They were emerging as a developing society in Canaan. Leviticus offers clear and concise processes how to aid those in despair, those who have fallen into misfortune, homelessness, hunger, and illness. God explicitly details the requirements of, quote, taking care of your brother or sister as when they be so low that their hand is slipping in yours. You must take hold. In Leviticus, God set forth the practice of redemption. Redemption is required by all, for all. What a glorious and reassuring concept that is. To know that if you fail, others are mandated there to be there to help keep you up. Who among us is not a step away from a hardship? Imagine knowing that God has provided a path to redemption and that the community is mandated to adhere to it, to lift up our brothers and sisters when they are low. It was the law. It was God's law. The United States is a Judeo-Christian society with the freedom to practice religion or not, as is our First Amendment right. We can't enact laws by mandating broad strokes of universal help or redemption for our brothers and sisters on the basis that it comes from Leviticus. This is an issue that we continually grapple with as a society. The difference between religion versus the state. Who are we as a society? Who do we want to be as a society? Unfortunately, or ultimately, it falls to the individual to decide. The kindness of others, the beliefs in helping your brothers and sisters when they are low, and the beauty of compassion. It falls to us. We continue now with our freedom song, Mi Chamocha, on page 322.
Great job. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh. Nora te'ilot osef eleh, Nora te'ilot osef Adonai, Imloch le'olam va'ed. Shira chadasha shilechu Yehudim, L'shimcha al tzvatayam, Yachad kulam odu, V'himlichu ve'ameru, Adonai, Imloch le'olam va'ed. Words get really easy here. Please sing with us. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la ya la la. Yai la ya la la. Yai la ya la la. Yai la. Tzur Yisrael, Uma be'ezrat Yisrael, Uvedechinu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael. Go aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
Hi, so good to be with everyone. Temple Israel, Campo Beach, and Pink Aid. What do these have in common? Each provide different feelings of spirituality, encompassing values that are significant to me. Attending Shabbat services most Friday nights, taking some of our educational classes, and volunteering here nurtures my connection to Judaism and especially to our Temple Israel family. Becoming a bat mitzvah enhances the relevance of receiving the gifts of knowledge and spirituality. Knowing the prayers and music and listening to our rabbis' sermons, I am able to simply be in each moment, focus on the benefits and enjoy our services. My beliefs and enjoy our services. They are a time to relax, reflect, and reach inside ourselves to our thoughts and feelings. Together, we can experience all that our Shabbat services offer. Going to Campo Beach year-round is where I am most tranquil and relaxed. Watching the changing light on the water as the sun sets is nourishing and pure joy. The natural beauty is awe-inspiring and wraps me with a sense of serenity. When we gather for Shabbat on the beach, we continue the Jewish tradition of acknowledging the gifts and wonders of nature. For many of us, our feelings of connection, gratitude, and spirituality are magnified during these beautifully dynamic services.
Pink Aid is a charitable organization that provides financial assistance for compassionate care to underserved breast cancer patients. As co-president, I strive to expand our healing benefits of kindness. Knowing that my volunteering makes a difference in helping patients get through treatment with compassion, support, and dignity is spiritually fulfilling. Compassion and helping others are Jewish values that inspire us to improve our world. Becoming a bat mitzvah deepens my meaningful connection with our community, heritage, culture, traditions, and values. Pursuing Tekino Lamed Temple Israel and with Pink Aid contribute to my sense of purpose. Campo Beach is my office where I studied for my bat mitzvah, do my Pink Aid work, and appreciate nature. Each are different, but all are spiritually related. My bond with Judaism, having moments of silent reflection, acting on my values of compassion and giving back, and looking at the open water while taking a deep breath, elevates my spirituality. What elevates yours? We continue with the Amidah on page 323. Please rise.
Adonai, Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha. Adonai, open my lips, let my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei HaKol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה.
325.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, בחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הצער. מחקר חיים בחסד, וחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשדי עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך מנהיג ומחיה, ומצליח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
Page 326 in the middle.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, אלוהי כל הארץ בבואו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו ומלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, לא נגיד גאונך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Please be seated.
We turn now to our song for Shabbat, saying how delightful it is for us to be together and sing together at the top of page 329.
It's probably not a coincidence that we have so many times to be happy in the service on such a day. So let's keep on that energy. Put our hands together as we sing. Yismechu b'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat Bekorei Oneg Shabbat Yismechu b'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat Bekorei Oneg Shabbat Mekadeshei, Mekadeshei Shemi Shabbat Kulam Yisbehu Ve'yitzagu Mitzuvecha Shabbat Yismechu Le'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat Bekorei Oneg Shabbat Yismechu Le'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat Bekorei Oneg Shabbat Ve'ashvi'i Ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat V'medad yamim Oto karata Shabbat Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat Bekorei Oneg Shabbat Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat Bekorei Oneg Shabbat Zecher L'maaseh v'reishit Shabbat Zecher L'maaseh v'reishit Shabbat Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat Bekorei Oneg Shabbat Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat Bekorei Oneg Shabbat.
Sometimes following all that joy, we need a little quiet. Our service gives us an opportunity for a silent personal reflection. I invite you to use the words of the page if you so choose, or to use the words of your heart and take a few moments for silent personal meditation.
Adonai tzuri v'go'ali, Adonai tzuri v'go'ali. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer. Ratzon imrefi ve'yon libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri ve'go'ali, Adonai tzuri ve'go'ali.
Friends, we reach in a very important moment in our service, the service of reading the Torah. And so, in a moment, I'm going to invite our B'nai Mitzvah to join us here on the bima and to stand so that we may pass the Torah scroll into their arms. It is symbolic of the work they've taken on over these past 2 years, taking Torah into their hearts and their minds as well. With great joy, I invite all to rise, and I invite our adult B'nai Mitzvah to join us on the bima.
Ein kamocha va'Elohim Adonai, ve'ein k'ma'asecha. Malchutecha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitein. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Av harachamim eitiva v'irtzonecha et Zion. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Ki vecha lavad batachnu, Melech el ram venisa, Adon olamim.
Many, many generations ago, as he was contemplating, nearing the end of his life, Moses, who brought Torah to all of us from on high, from the top of Mount Sinai, said this to us about this gift. He said, Lo bashamayim hi. It is not in the heavens that you should wonder, who's going to go up there and bring it down for me so that I may understand it and do it. Nor is it across the sea that someone may undertake a journey to a foreign land and bring this back so that I may understand it and learn it and do it. No, it is in each of your hearts and minds and souls, says Moses to all of us. All of you have proven, Lo bashamayim hi, Torah is not up on high. Lo me'ever layam, Torah is not in some foreign land. It's doable. Moreover, it's not words on a page. It's what's in your hearts and your soul and your mind. Yes, each of us becomes bar or bat mitzvah at age 13, regardless of whether we have a ceremony. We are considered an adult. You can't go around doing wrong and then just say, well, I never had a ceremony, so I didn't know. You don't get off that easy. None of you needed to do this to prove anything to anyone. And yet you did it. You learned and studied. More importantly, you became a community, you became friends, and here you stand before our congregation and before your family, ready to take Torah into your arms, just as you have taken it into your hearts and minds and souls. We pass this scroll to each of you with great love. You may be seated.
In a moment, our students are going to read from chapter 25. I don't need this. Chapter 25 of Leviticus. 25, right?
Yeah.
Great, just making sure. They're reading from Parshat Bahar Behukotai, a bunch of letters that basically mean it's the end of the third book of the Torah, the end of the book of Leviticus.
And the text of that is in your program.
On
The Torah
page
service
16?
starts on page 15 with the blessings. And then you'll see the Torah portion following that in your program.
The whole book of Leviticus is a book of rules and laws, and it tells us exactly what to follow and how to be and what does it mean to be a community. Specifically, what you'll hear read today is about Shemitah, about the 7th year of rest, or the Shabbat of the land, which you've heard spoken about a little bit, and I know Sam will teach us about later, so I'm not going to ruin what Sam's about to say. But also, at the very end, we get a conditional if-then statement. If you follow my laws, here's what's going to happen. And if you don't, here's what's going to happen. Here are the consequences. Also, we hear about vows and what does it mean to make a vow to God. Each of our B'nai Mitzvah students have made a vow today to continue to learn and be a part of this community in their learning and in their engagement. And so we cannot wait to invite them up to the Torah today.
Absolutely. And so here's how this is going to work. If you didn't already know this, surprise, but you're invited to, yes, all of you other than the students, have the honor of the opening aliyah, the opening blessing for the Torah. Now, if you don't feel like it's in your wheelhouse to recite that, that's okay too. But we would invite everybody at this time to please rise. Turn to page 15. It is page 15, right? Did I get that right? With the Torah blessings. All right. And we're going to call our first aliyah. So for the honor of the reading of the Torah, for our first student, please come up, Sam Gardner. Ya'amod Shmuel ben Meir la'aliyah harishona. And the way this is going to work is you're all going to start the blessing, then you're going to have a seat, and then at the very end of all the readings, the students are going to sing the closing blessing. So, all right, here we go, everybody. Baruch Hu on the count of 3. Baruch Hu. 1, 2, 3. Baruch Hu et Adonai. Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Amen. Please have a seat.
Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe behar Sinai lemor dahaber el bnei Israel ve'armata alehem ki tavohu el haaretz asher ani notein lachem v'shivta haaretz Shabbat ladanai she'eshanim tizra sadecha v'shesh shanim tizmor karmecha ve'asaftaha et tevuataha uvashana hashaveit Shabbat Shabbaton yeh la'aretz Shabbat ladanai sadka lo tizraha ve'karmecha lo tizmor.
Beautiful job. Yasher Koach. We can all say Yasher Koach. Yeah, very good. All right, for the second aliyah, for inviting the Torah reader Ellen Horowitz, please come up. Tamod Ellen bat Reuven ufeiga la'aliyah hashni'ah. Whenever you're ready. Here, let me help you with this.
Oh, thank you. Here? Right here, right?
No,
that's my spot.
it's okay. Right here.
Et Safia kitzirha lo tikzor ve'et invei nizirecha lo tivzor shenat Shabbaton yeh la'aretz ve'haita Shabbat ha'aretz lachem le'ochla lecha ule'avdecha ve'la'amatecha ve'lishirha uletoshavha hagarim imach ve'liv hemtecha ve'lachaya asher be'artzecha Tihye kol tevuata lecho.
Beautiful, Yasher Koach. So nice. So nice. Okay, spoiler alert, you're all going to pass, okay? So just breathe. All right? This is not a grade system. That's what I loved about rabbinical school. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Our third aliyah, Sandy Lefkowitz, please come forward. Ta'amod sarit bat lava unomi la'aliyah hashalishit. Lefkowitzes, please behave. Thank you. All right.
You know.
Okay, you got it?
Ve'asafta lecha sheva shatot shanim. Sheva shanim, sheva pe'amim. Vahayu laha yamei sheva shavtot hashanim. Tesha va'arba'im shana. Ve'avarta shofar teruah b'chodesh Shaviai ba'asor lachodesh bayom hakippurim ta'aviru shofar b'chol artzechem v'kideshtem et shanat ha'hamishim shana ukratem deror ba'aretz lakol yoshvea yovel hi tihea lachem vashitem ish el hachuzato v'ish al mishpachto tashuvu.
Very nice. Very nice. And now, Jody Vitelli, it's your turn. Ta'amod, gitel bad muchta ufesh alea, la'aliyah harevit. See it? Yes.
Okay, when you're ready.
Yes.
Yovel hi shnat ha-chamashim shenat tiyeh lachem lo tizra'u v'lo tikseru et sefihecha v'lo tizra'u et nezirecha ki yovel hi kodesh tiyeh lachem mithasadeh tochlu et tevuata bishnat hayovel hazot tashuvu ish el azuato.
Nice job. Okay, and for the fifth aliyah, Michelle Perkins. Ta'amon, Michaela bat Varen v'Natali la'aliyah ha'chamishit.
V'ki timkeru mimkar la'amitecha o kano miyad amitecha al tonu ish et achiv b'mispar shanim achar tayovel tikne meit amitecha b'mispar shnei tevuot yimkar lach lefi rov hashanim tarbe miknato ufi meot hashanim tamid mitznapo kir mispar tevuot hu moker lach Velo tonu ish et amito ve'areta me Elohecha ki ani Adonai Elohechem.
Beautiful job, Yasher Koach. All right, and now Sandy Rothenberg, please stand up. Ta'amod Sara bat Moshe ve'Adel la'aliyah hashishit. Whenever you're ready.
Va'asitem et hukotai va'et mishpatai tishmeru va'asitem otam Vishavtem al haaretz lavetach, v'natna haaretz pirya, va'achaltem lasova, vishavtem lavetach aleha, v'chi tomru manochal pashana hashvi'it, Hein lo nizra velo ne'esof et tivuatenu vitziviti et birkati lachem bashana hashishit va'asat et hatvua lishlosh hashanim.
I got it. Good job. Good job. Awesome. Yasher Koach. All right. And down to our final two. Michelle Cordenman, you're right there, right? All right. Ta'amod Malka Penina bat Motel v'nechuma la'aliyah hashevit.
Huzratem et Hashana Hashmini Va'achaltem min Hatvua Yashan Ad Hashana Hachi'i Ad Bo Tavuata Tochlu Yashan Va'aretz lo timaker leads me to Kili haaretz ki gerim v'toshavim atem imadi uvkol aretz ad chuzatchem Gi'ula titnu la'aretz.
Yasher Koach. Nicely done. All right, and for our final Torah reader, last but not least, Achrona Chaviva, Ta'amod Chaya bat Yitzchak uvlim ala aliyah hasheminit.
Ki amuch achicha umachar me'achuzato uva go alo hakarov elav vigaal et mimkar achiv ve'ish Ki lo yelo go el v'hisiga yado umatza kadei geulato v'hishav et shanei mimkaro v'heshiv et ha Odev la'ish asher machalo v'shav la'achuzato v'im lo matzea yado day hashiv lo v'haya mimkaro b'yad hakoneh oto ad shanat hayovel v'yatza bayovel v'shav la'achuzato.
Yasher Koach. Beautifully done. Beautifully done. So now, having done all of that, we have the opportunity to do two things. We get to invite our students to stand up, okay? And we're going to have you all recite the closing blessing over the Torah. And then after that, we all get to give them a hearty Yasher Koach, which means you are strong. May you have strength in all of your days. All right, so students, closing blessing on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Baruch atah Adonai.
V'chayei olam nata b'tochenu.
Baruch atah Adonai. Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Yasher Koach. Yasher Koach. You can all have a seat. Beautifully done.
And now in the presence of our Torah, we take a moment, as we do in every service, quite regularly when we gather together in community, to have a more somber tone to our thoughts, to our feelings, and to send some of this joy that we feel filling this sanctuary right now to all of those we know and love who are in need of healing. We've shared names of those in need of healing in multiple different ways in this community, in chat over Zoom most recently, and this afternoon. I invite you all to picture those people you are thinking of. Hold them in your minds and your hearts. See their smiling faces as they are when they are feeling their best, when they are healthy, when they are glad to see you. And we will take all of those sentiments together and offer them in prayer. Misha Berach on page 371.
Sheberach Avoteinu Mikol HaBracha Le'imotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our life a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mikol habracha those in need of healing with refuah shlema, a renewal of body, a renewal of spirit, and let us say, invite you now to please rise as we lift and dress the Torah. וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ויד משה. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, העולם עומד, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. Please have a seat. And you've heard reflections and spiritual insights from all of our students so far this morning, except for a few. And there are two students who chose to undertake a slightly more in-depth project. They studied the Torah portion with a little bit more intensity and had a little bit more to say and a little bit stricter standards from Rabbi Moss. So in their studies, and so Sam's looking at me like, I'm so glad we're done. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not too hard on them, but the truth is that they each have a really interesting insight to share, specifically connected to this Torah portion, the past year that we've had in the society that we are trying to build together. So we'll hear them each one by one. First Sandy and then Sam. So Sandy, come on up.
Shalom Alechem. Alechem Shalom. This is the greeting we say at the start of the yortzeit of my great-grandfather, Shalom Alechem. We gather every year to read some of his stories, the merry ones, to remember him with laughter through tears as he asked in his will. This tradition has endured as our history, religion, and culture of the Jewish people has endured. Our history is a story of resilience. This year, the pandemic year, how fortuitous that I chose to become a bat mitzvah. Leviticus 25, our Torah portion, teaches us about the laws of Shemitah, the sabbatical year. Shemitah means release and speaks of the relationship between the earth and God. According to biblical law, every seventh year, the land is to lie fallow and not be planted. All agricultural activity is forbidden. Any fruits or vegetables which grow on their own can be picked by anyone. All debts are to be forgiven. The land shall have a rest, a Sabbath. Every 50th year there shall be a jubilee. The land shall again lie fallow, and all land shall be returned to its ancestral families. Debts are to be forgiven, and assistance given to those in need with kindness and without compensation. Indentured servants are to be freed. The reason for these laws was to ensure an equitable, fair, and healthy society. Although the name sounds joyous, it was a somber occasion. Farmers would be unable to earn a living, and property would revert to the original families. This was to reset the economy from individual pursuits to community responsibility. The question is asked, what are we to eat in the seventh year if we may neither sow nor gather our crops? God answers, if you observe my laws and commandments, I will provide enough food in the sixth year, enough for 3 years. I think this asks of people to have great faith in God, that God shall provide a bountiful harvest. To me, it's a call to action for us to do our part. The Torah asks us to stop the exploitation of the earth and take responsibility for each other. We are to take a step back, stop, and reflect. It seems as though this year, the pandemic year, has been a forced Shemitah, a forced sabbatical. We were not prepared to rest or cease working. During this difficult year, we've endured significant loss of lives and serious illnesses. Many of us have had to adjust to new technology and virtual work from school and home. Our young adults have moved back to their family homes. Food insecurity is prevalent in our communities. The pandemic has exposed great socioeconomic and racial inequality. Climate change is an immediate concern. We can look to the values of the sabbatical laws to find hope and inspiration during this difficult year. Our concern for the environment and community assistance to those in need can help create a more compassionate and just society. We need to plan for great and unexpected changes. The sabbatical law is a sharing economy. Fences are removed and crops are gleaned for everyone. During the pandemic, restaurants have pivoted to provide food for the food insecure. Farmers across the country have grown fruits and vegetables to give to their communities in need instead of exporting wheat and grain. Small, intentional communities where people really know each other can sustain us in difficult times. I have found this support through Temple Israel during virtual Shabbat and my B'nai Mitzvah class. Our community has come together in new ways. We have shared food and necessities with our neighbors. We have shown support for our essential workers. Painted rocks and stars with messages of hope have appeared at our mailbox. We are all in this together. The pandemic has brought cleaner air as we are decreasing our carbon footprint as fewer people are driving to work. We have noticed a renewal of animals in the wild. Dolphins were spotted in New York City's East River. Next week, with family and good friends, we will gather on Zoom for the 105th Yortzeit of my great-grandfather, Sholem Aleichem. His life story was marked by misfortune and sorrow, but he said, finding the humor in everyday life and making people laugh is like a sickness with me. He said, why does the man wear eyeglass frames without the lenses? Because it's better than nothing. And you have to keep on living, even if it kills you. I feel the spirit of the sabbatical and Jubilee year are relevant today. Our Jewish values can help guide us to make the world a better place. I hope you will join me in working together to help one another and our earth. I have much faith and gratitude for the scientific community for developing a vaccine so quickly. Their work may lead to new cures for other illnesses. And thank you to the first responders, medical, clergy, and essential workers. May we now see the light coming into a new day without a pandemic. My hope for the future is that our communities stay strong together and continue to offer assistance and compassion to those around us. And I hope we can celebrate our B'nai Mitzvah together in person with music and dancing and tell our stories with laughter through tears. Thank you. Thank you.
I wonder what Shalom Aleichem would say about people who buy like $1,000 Gucci frames and then don't put lenses in them. I don't know if he would recognize that.
Thank you, Sandy. That was terrific. And good afternoon, all. I'm so happy to be with you today. Like most of us who've been lucky enough to be well educated, I realize I've been reading and thinking about the Bible for my whole adult life. It informs much of the literature and history that I read, and it crops up in news stories on a regular basis. And of course, I have followed it at services through these many years. In some misguided, certainly secular way, I assumed I knew the Torah. But an amazing aspect of our B'nai Mitzvah experience for me has been really reading, perhaps seeing, and certainly paying close attention to Torah for what feels like the first time. This has been very exciting, though not immediately so. I must admit that my first take on our class Parsha, Leviticus 25, was that it was very dry. A series of priestly instructions for managing farmland, which seemed to have no bearing on or relevance to our lives today. How mistaken I was. Multiple deep readings and our lively B'nai Mitzvah class conversations have revealed the incredible foresight and timelessness of the Torah's teachings. Our Parsha this week focuses on God's relationship to the land of Israel, Canaan, as well as the relationship of God to the Israelite people who lived upon that land. It establishes that if the Israelites were to dwell in and enjoy the fruits of the land, they had to recognize and respect two basic truths. First and foremost, God owned the land. Therefore, it was God's right to do with it what he or she wanted. And secondly, and equally important, God also owned the people of Israel because she had redeemed them or freed them from the land of Egypt. What follows from these assertions are a series of commands and guidelines that define the relationship which, when looked at through a modern lens, anticipates our contemporary concept of a social contract. In essence, the Parsha is asking, how do we live together successfully and peacefully as a society? And are we bound by, or should we be bound by, similar agreement to the one that God had with the Israelites? A central command in our Leviticus verses is the establishment of a Jubilee year, the requirement every 50 years to return all property of the Israelites to their original tribal owners. This dramatic pronouncement comes after a series of more modest rules and prohibitions, which Sandy just spoke about so eloquently. The seventh-year sabbatical seems so much more modest when compared to the radical requirement to celebrate a full Jubilee year, which proclaims the liberty or release of all the lands. In other words, the Israelites are required to return all the original lands given to their ancestors at the time of Joshua and the people who conquered Canaan. For me, this commandment is astonishing. It is, in effect, a declaration of a universal leveling of land ownership and, by extension, wealth in society. You can imagine how much your life would be thrown into utter confusion if you were required to hand back your Wilton, Weston, or Westport residence and property to a previous owner or developer, or for that matter, to return your land to the Pequot indigenous peoples who lived in this region well before our ancestors arrived on these shores. Why did the Levites believe they needed to do this? And what is the purpose of releasing or returning the land to the original owners? This law appears to be creating a mechanism to guarantee fairness in land ownership and to provide a hands up to those who are less fortunate in generating wealth for themselves. In an ancient agrarian society like biblical Canaan, wealth was defined by successfully amassing and cultivating the land, by the accumulation of domestic and farming animals, and the development of a labor force, whether hired or servile, to work the land. Stunningly, the Torah was establishing a form of land justice, and by extension, an equitable and moral society, one which responds to the commandment to follow God's laws and to promote the well-being of the community. This issue of land justice and land equity has great resonance and relevance to our current times. Among the many issues raised by the Black Lives Matter and the sustainability movement is the growing awareness of inequity of access embedded in our land use regulations and the need to incorporate inclusive growth concepts in the development of affordable and diverse housing opportunities in our towns and cities. This topic is now regularly in the news and has become an important conversation in our communities and our neighborhoods as we come to grips with the inherent inequities in the way we utilize our land and the way different groups are not able to access certain districts and neighborhoods. In my work as a Connecticut-based architect and planner, and as a volunteer in my own Wilton community, I am proud to be part of this conversation as we all work together to find solutions. We Jews remember well the history of racially restrictive covenants, or gentlemen's agreements, that kept us out of neighborhoods like Darien and East Hartford. There's an ugly history of redlining in Connecticut cities, such as New Haven, Hartford, and Bridgeport, that kept Black and brown people confined to certain neighborhoods. Unbelievably, some of this remains enshrined in our current zoning regulations, but disguised as density restrictions. For example, the establishment of a single-family zones that become the excuse for denying higher density, affordable multifamily dwellings. Often, I am struck by the contrast in housing opportunities available in New Haven, where I work, and in Wilton, where I live. Currently, New Haven has a vigorous affordable housing requirement, while Wilton and other local towns struggle to implement the state-mandated minimum regulations to include affordability in our mixed-use developments. By the way, this is currently a huge discussion happening here in Weston, where Weston zoning regulations only allow single-family homes on 1 or 2.5 acre properties, causing land prices to be well over the affordability range. I admit this disparity makes me feel guilty and uncomfortable in my work on Wilton's Architectural Review Board, but I'm actively trying to make changes in my community. Meanwhile, there is some good news on a more regional scale. Organizations like the Regional Plan Association, RPA, and Desegregate Connecticut are researching data, developing statistics, and advocating for radical new approaches to density and inclusivity. And on the state level, statutes are being introduced which will require towns and cities to reform outdated land use laws and encourage more equitable communities. In Leviticus 25, verse 35, God says, "And when your brother will be so low, so that his hand is slipping with you, then you shall take hold of him, an alien and a visitor, and he shall live with you." We are commanded here to be more than compassionate. We are commanded to be inclusive. The idea is to embrace kindness and fairness, to treat all members of society like a family member with justice and equity. In our contemporary world, diversity creates vitality. Enhancing our lives and well-being, revising our community's regulations on land use, then is a form of tikkun olam, healing our world. And as we re-enter our communities after our long COVID quarantine, how hopeful it is to realize that an ancient text provides such poignant guidance for our times, and in a way serves as a model for creating a more just, equitable, and inclusive society. We unfortunately live in a NIMBY world, a stance we now understand is neither just nor justifiable. In Leviticus, God not only commands, but demands justice and equity in people's lives, and this extends to where we live. The ability to live well and free is not merely a social issue, but as we know from our own difficult history, it is a Jewish issue. This is not easy work or easily accomplished work, but is the right work. So here's the pitch, everybody. Let us show up in our communities, serve on local boards and town councils, attend P&Z meetings, make your voices heard when your town revisits its plan of conservation and development, and vote with conscience. Let us all take actions individually and together to build a jubilee of justice and equity for all. Shabbat Shalom.
Yasher Koach, Sam. It's not an easy conversation to have in this community, and it's such an important one.
We are so proud of each and every one of you. Nothing we could say right now can truly summarize this feeling that we have as we look out and just see or guess that you are smiling under your masks. It's wonderful. But here are a few of our thoughts and reflections. Our tradition teaches that the line from V'ahavta, V'shinantam levanecha, and you shall teach them to your children, is not only a nice idea to ensure continuity of our people, but in fact a literal way to lengthen their days. You shall teach them to your children and speak of them, that your days may be multiplied. We read that in Deuteronomy. And indeed, as a class, we spoke these words a lot.
Ve'ahavta. Is that purple or pink? Or is it the one? Oh, it's yellow. But I don't have yellow.
We taught them, we learned them, we spoke them, we sounded them out, we highlighted them, we sang them. How many hours did we collectively spend over and over again? And all that happened after we had painstakingly decoded and sounded out every single syllable, until the reading came more naturally and the sounds tasted more familiar in your mouths. This is not an easy endeavor. Engaging with our sacred text in our ancient tongue is not meant to be easy. And yet, somehow we are told it is a way of bestowing life, a way of life. Perhaps through the course of this past year and a half, you all discovered new Jewish life through your learning and your dedication. But that is not to say that you didn't have rich and meaningful Jewish lives before you embarked on this journey with us. On the contrary, you likely dared to take on this gargantuan task because of the richness of your Jewish lives and the meaning that you only wanted to deepen. That is perhaps the message that we most wanted to share with you this entire time. This tradition, this wisdom, this liturgy, and even those letters and vowels and symbols, they are yours. Let us help you discover the tools to make them your own.
And you did make them your own. Our Jewish learning as a class transformed and elevated all of our lives. How many times did you consider quitting when the pandemic stretched you thin, only to recommit, catch up, and succeed? Many of you in your statements reflected on just how difficult the year was and how important this class was. It doesn't mean that it was always easy for us to maintain that commitment and stay together as a group, but how many times did you find yourself surprisingly connected to your chavruta pair in small groups, realizing that you have come to share more than just practice time together? How many times did your spouse hear you chanting your Torah portion over and over, reviewing it so many times in the shower? I won't tell anyone. Did you start to make new connections at holiday times, around the Seder table, in worship, when you hear about a Jewish concept in the news perhaps you were not familiar with previously? Remember our times together, even though we couldn't be together, sharing Shabbat dinner over Zoom, lighting the menorah together at Hanukkah. How many times did you cherish our Monday nights together, an anchor of sacred ritual during a most tumultuous year? It is so nourishing to dig into our Judaism together.
And we did. We dug deep into the structure of the worship service, peeling back the layers to reveal the ongoing story we retell every time we pray together. These are the parts of the service that you led today, that you highlighted through your own creative reflections. We begin each service by recognizing ourselves as living human beings, each of us another miracle of creation.
In our service, just as in our learning together, we explore some of the most pressing questions about God. Jews locate ourselves as being in relationship with God, recipients of Torah. Being a part of this agreement or covenant enables us to not only recall moments of redemption in our history, but to imagine and enact new policies in the future, just as Sam spoke about a moment ago. But if we're honest, we all bring baggage into this relationship, this aspirational relationship with God. Doubt, confusion, even anger, but also respect, curiosity, openness. In your personal statements, many of you wrote that our discussions together about God signaled a new chapter in your relationship with God, a chance to really think in a more deep, a more adult way than most people, let's be honest, ever get to.
And reflecting on these 16 months of growth is simply another way of telling the story of our lives. Your lives were wonderful before you enrolled in this class. They were full, and surely they were more than busy enough. And you already understood who you are in the world. But now something has changed. You have a different level of confidence, a renewed sense of purpose. Will our class time together lengthen our days, like Viahafta says? You'll have to get back to us on that one. But we pray that you are entering this new stage of life, of your Jewish lives, in the same way that we are, from having been your teachers. Definitely renewed, definitely enriched. Each one of you brought your own gifts and insights to our class, weaving your storylines together into our collective communal Jewish tale. And today, a new chapter begins. So now we will invite you all to come and find your rabbi so we may share a special private blessing with each of you.
Please join us in the Shehechianu blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu b'zman hazeh.
God, for the gift of life, for sustaining us in this year when none of us take it for granted, and for allowing us to reach this day. We invite you to please rise for Aleinu L'Shabeach, page 586. Aleinu L'Shabeach L'Adon HaKol, L'Teit Gedula L'Yotzer Bereshit, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו You can be seated.
A prayer that is in praise of God. I do believe in God, but troubling has been the seeming conflict of personal loss with a prayer of praise for God. Family, friends, and my community have experienced loss that seemed insurmountable. For me, a poem by Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai has offered some reconciliation between grief and gratitude. I would like to share this with you. All the generations before me. All the generations before me donated me, bit by bit, so that I'd be erected all at once here in Jerusalem, like a house of prayer or a charitable institution. It binds. My name's my donor's name. It binds. I'm approaching the age of my father's death. My last will's patched with many patches. I have to change my life and death daily to fulfill all the prophecies prophesied for me, so that they're not lies. It binds. I've passed 40. There are jobs I cannot get because of this. Were I in Auschwitz, they would not have sent me out to work, but gassed me straight away. It binds. A personal moment of compatibility today is the 43rd anniversary of my eldest daughter Janet's bat mitzvah at Temple Israel. My parents were there with us then. Their absence today binds. As we rise as a congregation to praise the Creator who has brought us to this time, and to remember with the memories in our hearts and minds those whom we have lost, I invite you to rise and turn to page 598.
Truly, we are bound to all the generations that preceded us and who enabled us to be here on this day. We are bound to their memories, which we carry gently, sometimes heavily, with us along the path of life. We are bound to the blessings and gifts that they bestowed upon us. We are bound to the sadness and loss as well, as we wish they were here beside us on this day. Zichronam livracha. May each and every one of those that we remember, each and every one of our friends and family members, our parents and grandparents and spouses, our friends and neighbors, the righteous among all the nations and the martyrs of our people, be with us on this day. May our souls ever be bound with theirs. Page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbam varach le'alam lamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha b'richu. Le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Hosei shalom b'mromav, huya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the Holy One of blessing who creates harmony in the heavens above bring peace to us, to all the people of Israel, and to all humanity. And we say together, Amen. Amen.
Hoseh shalom b'mromav, uyaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Please be seated. We have a couple of presents for you now, and a couple of surprises. Students, if you haven't had the chance yet to see what's in the second half of your program, I encourage you to take a look, and perhaps in the presence of your loved one. Now, on the way home later today, it doesn't matter. We just want to make sure that you see the surprise that's waiting there for you. We also have a few gifts to give you, physical things. And so here's how I think we should do this. I'm going to give to Rabbi Friedman and Rabbi NB these envelopes and gifts. Thank you. They're not for you, Rabbi.
But they look so fun to unwrap.
They look so nice.
We're going to call each of you forward, and you'll see in this envelope, thank you. They might not be in the right order,
That's
sorry.
okay.
They're close to the right order. In this envelope, you all have one of these, a certificate filled out and signed by all four of us, attesting to this great accomplishment, and it also has room for you to insert your own name to sign it. And it says that we congratulate you on this commitment to continue studying and upholding Torah, that this be one of many milestones in Jewish study and action in your life. We hope that you will find it a lovely memento of this work that you have given lovingly over the past year, as well as a letter that's just to you. When you come up, we're going to invite you by Hebrew and English names. We're going to invite your family and friends who are with you here today to stand, realizing that everybody who's joining us on the internet, hi everyone, will also be standing and kvelling in your honor. So you'll come up, you'll get a certificate envelope, you'll get a gift, maybe an elbow bump, whatever you are feeling up to, and we'll feel glad to shower these little small tokens of our appreciation and congratulations on you.
Michelle Korenman.
Malka Penina Bat Meutal V'Nechuma.
You can come this way. Congratulations. Congratulations. You did it. Jody Vitelli.
Gito Bat Mechuta U Pesha Leah.
Congratulations. Ellen Hale-Parn Horowitz.
Ellen Bat Ruven U Pita.
Congratulations. How nice it is to have that. Michelle Kellner Perkins.
Michaela Bat. There we go. Oh, Voren or Natalie. Thank you.
Sandy Rothenberg.
Sarah Bat Moshe U Va'adel.
Kathy Diamond.
Chaya Bat Yitzchak U Blima.
Lima.
Sandy Lefkowitz.
Sarit Bat Leva Noami. Thank you.
Sam Gardner.
Shmuel Ben Meir. You too.
Well, we're ready to get the celebration started with a little kiddush and a little motzi. Before we do, some thank yous are in order. And so, first off, thank you to our 8 B'nai Mitzvah students who've blessed us today with just such a memorable experience, such a wonderful service, full of beautiful words. You are all exemplary models of what it means to be adults in the Jewish community. And thank you for the opportunity to celebrate. Don't we all need it? Thank you to Rabbi Danny Moss and Rabbi Susan Moss, who led this whole process from start to finish, beginning a year and a half, 2 years ago. And we're with this group every Monday night with endless repetitions of Ve'ahavta and Avot Imahot and lots of learning Hebrew and starts and stops all via Zoom and during the pandemic. Really a labor of love and a labor of honor for our congregation. Thank you to Rabbi Enby, who was also part of the teaching crew. It was a pleasure for me to stop in with you guys from time to time as well. And thank you to all of our staff who made this service possible: Lisa Goldberg, Brian Bierman, Eric and Sean, Troy, Lester, and Jesse, and even Kevin, who's out making sure we're safe outside in the parking lot. Thank you to everyone who made this possible. And Mike Lentowski, thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. And we are ready to get the celebration started, unless there's anything else that I'm missing. We're good? We're good? Okay. So everyone can rise, and we have a little kiddush and a little motzi right over here, and then we can get the celebration started. I know you guys have lots of things planned, which is beautiful. Thank you to all of you who joined us via our live stream from home or from wherever else you might be. Yes, we're all waving to you. It's really a pleasure to have you with us virtually today as well. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen L'chaim. I hope you guys are going to drink something stronger than this a little later on. This is just juice. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. B'tei avon, everybody.
Siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov, siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov, siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, siman tov, yehelanu, 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 ulechol Yisrael, yehelanu, yehelanu, ulechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, ulechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, yehelanu, ulechol Yisrael.
Mazel tov. Mazel tov, everybody. Congratulations to you. Mazel tov.